This is the Kids Have Sun editorial board meeting with the candidates for the 26th district, the House of Representatives. I'm going to let the incumbent, Jan Angel, we're going to let you go first. Okay. No more than 2 minutes to introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Jan, Stephen, and Karen, and then start questions. Go ahead.
Okay. I am Jan Angel. I live in Port Orchard, and I am seeking re-election. I think the first reason I ran 12 years ago was the fact that I want to make sure our people have the very best lifestyle they can have. And right now, that's really tough. We've got people that have lost their jobs, they're out of work, and it's really tough to pay your bills and to hold on to your home when you don't have a job. And that's one of the things that I really want to continue to work on, is getting our people back to work. My priorities, I've got education, which is the only mandate by our Constitution that we are mandated to fund. And I've supported fund education first from the day I started. Next is public safety. I feel that as an elected, it's my job to make sure our people are safe. That includes law enforcement, corrections, emergency management. And then we have the moral obligation to make sure we take care of our folks that truly cannot take care of themselves. Our seniors, our disabled, our mentally ill. And over all of this, we are tasked to put a budget together that is not only balanced, but I believe we have an obligation to make a sustainable budget, which hasn't happened, and that's why you've seen 6 special sessions, and since I've been there in, should be 4 sessions, I've served 10. So I want to make sure that we can get back and get to a sustainable budget so that we can fund what our priorities are well, and based on what revenue we do have. And I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of that more a little bit later. So thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Stephen Greer, and I'm running as a Democrat for 26th District. And this is my first time into the political arena. I am a career attorney, former prosecutor, and now public defender. I represent children and also the mentally ill of Kitsap County. And my comments are actually pretty similar to Ms. Angel's. Education is first. As a lawyer, I'm quite familiar with the court decision that came out. And it says we are to appropriately fund. In fact, education is the first priority. Public safety is the next, and both are very expensive. I work in the criminal justice system, so I'm aware of that. And the protection of vulnerable citizens. I represent the mentally ill every week, and the support for them has decreased, and we're filling up our jails with our mentally ill now. And our vulnerable older adults, same issue. I used to work with them as well in senior legal services, and I'm quite familiar that both ends are getting cut off as the budget shrinks, and tough decisions do need to be made. And the reason I'm running is because I'm a moderate. I'm not right or left, and I guess you could consider me either conservative Democrat or liberal Republican. I'm not sure which category fit in best, but fiscally I'm very conservative, socially I'm a moderate, and I think there's a lot to be said for having more moderates down in Olympia. We have too much division. It used to be 11th hour and 59th minute. Now we're going to the 13th hour to settle everything, and that needs to change. Thank you.
And I am Karin Asherbrenner. I am a Gig Harbor Peninsula resident, have been for 40 years. I am a teacher. I teach 8th grade U.S. history in the Peninsula School District. I've been with them for the past 15 plus years. I returned to school at age 40 to get my college degree, and I say to students even nowadays, you don't need to know in the 8th grade what you want to be when you grow up. You just need to experience a lot of different things. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running for office. I still believe that one person can make a difference, and I tell that to my students as well. I love to teach them about the Constitution and their Bill of Rights and get them all excited about government, but I also teach them that they have a responsibility and an obligation to participate, to be aware and informed and intelligent about decisions that they make regarding their government. And so I am taking that one step further and doing as I teach. And I believe that there have not been enough advances made, not enough steps taken to ensure that our residents are getting the help they need as far as job creation. I think we need to have some serious discussions regarding budget reform. And I think we need a change, and we need to make that change happen soon. I'm also a veteran. I served 22 years in the United States Army. Most of that was was reserve time. I do have 2.5 years of active duty time. I was deployed to Saudi Arabia in 1991 in support of Operation Desert Storm. My oldest daughter, as an Army officer, served 2 tours in Iraq. So I know firsthand what it's like to be a veteran and to be the family of a veteran. And I know that our area needs to do even more than we've done to support those who have served for us. So veterans issues are very big for me. I touched on jobs and job creation, and we still have far too many friends and families who are out of work, whose businesses have closed, and I think that it is the state's obligation to assist, not necessarily with money, but with training, with, as I said, budget reform, so that we can make some changes to the BNO taxes that are crippling some of our small businesses. So for me, it's education, jobs, and veterans, and those are the reasons why I chose to run for office. Thank you.
Karin, is it Karin?
It's Karin.
Karin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you the first question because Jan and Stephen both referenced this, and I'm going to let you guys elaborate on what you asked, what you mentioned. The idea of funding education first, making that the first thing that's taken care of in the budget. I know that's been talked about before, but it's never actually been written into legislation. So first, I want to know if you share their opinion that that should be the first commitment of money before anything else is talked about. And then I'm going to let you, both of you, also kind of answer that question of how you're going to make it happen if you're elected.
Yes, 100%. I do believe that that is, I know it's the state's obligation to fully fund education first. Currently, I believe that 41% of the state's budget goes to education. And so there's a debate as when we talk about funding education as the paramount duty of the state, how much of the budget does that require? The court decision determined that we weren't doing well enough, and so we need to find ways to make it happen. There is a huge push to regarding education reform, fixing teachers, the charter school initiative that was recently filed. There are all of these changes coming to education, and I think we need to have a much larger discussion than what we have had regarding funding. We need to fund schools first. That goes without saying. We also need to stop gutting higher education, because we're in an age where students' education doesn't just stop with a high school diploma. In fact, a high school diploma will not be sufficient in the future. So.
Real quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be willing to vote for legislation that formalized funding education first?
Most definitely.
Will you vote yes or no for the charter school initiatives?
I will vote against charter schools.
Okay.
Okay. This last session we ran a bill to fund education first, and we actually had a budget that was run to do just that. And it didn't pass, so I've already supported it before. I've taken the mic on the House floor and fought for it for a number of years. And I believe that because the Constitution mandates it to do that, that's our marching orders. Right now, the McCleary decision said to us that thou shalt not cut education. And so what we've got to look at is, I believe, we fund education right when we first get to Olympia. We get that budget put together, you pass it through the House, the Senate, get the governor to sign on to it, and it takes the politics out of our children and our grandchildren's education, and you get it done, and you actually fund that with your first dollar, not the last dime that everybody's fighting for at the end. So yes, I definitely support that, and I have voted to support that in the past.
And how are you going to convince colleagues to vote for that as well then? I mean, it's been an idea before, it hasn't passed. What's your strategy now?
Well, because I think the lawsuit is marching orders. It said, thou shalt not cut education further, and we've got to show that we are making progress in that. One of the things we did is we passed a roadmap of how we will get there, and that was Bill 2261. But we will continue to work with that. And one of the things that I think is really important, it's not just adding more money, because the auditor just recently came out with an 89-page performance audit review. And what he said in there is that we are funding $12 billion annually to education, yet we're getting so little of that to the classroom. And he's asking for everybody, the Office of the Superintendent, OSPI, they're asking everybody to come together to figure out how can we get more of that money to the classroom. And I think that's a directive. When the auditor comes out and he puts these recommendations in place, somebody ought to be paying attention to them. And I know that OSPI is reviewing that as we speak. So you're looking at cost effectiveness, what you can do with the money you have coming in. But when you're getting basically 59 cents on a dollar to the classroom, we got a problem there. And I think that's the thing. I sit on education policy. I've sat 2 years on early learning. I've sat 2 years on higher education. And I feel that I've had the chance to see the entire picture. And I want to continue trying to work us in that direction.
A yes or no on the charter schools question?
The charter schools, I have not read the bill. I believe that any tool that you can put in the toolbox to help benefit our children is a good thing, but I have to go back and I have to read the initiative, and I have not done that so far.
Thank you. The McCleary decision made it very clear that the Washington State Supreme Court believes the legislature has completely failed in funding education. Now they had to use the word shall to the state government. Before it was you should, and the state government kept coming up with plans but never succeeded. And now there are marching orders from the state Supreme Court. There's no choice anymore. It's been taken away. So the question is how to do it. And amply funded does not necessarily mean more money. A couple things have happened recently. The No Child Left Behind exemption just occurred for the state of Washington, which is going to free up more money for our local schools that were going to places like Sylvan Learning Center. Now that's a catch-22 because they're a private business, they might lose some money. But, and I'm a small business owner myself, but now our schools are going to have more money staying after school to meet federal requirements on education. And one of the problems we have with our funding is that the state was not giving enough funds, or at least not directing them correctly. Then we have our local school levies, and wealthy neighborhoods get great schools, and the lower income neighborhoods get lousy schools because they can't afford the levies that are happening next door to them. And that needs to be evened out, and this legislation that needs to occur from the McCleary decision will take a big step towards that. Levies should be for extras. The Constitution says that basic education shall be supplied, and our state Supreme Court says it shall be done. And so there's no choice anymore. So it has to come first. And throwing more money at it is not necessarily the answer. The question is, can we do it more efficiently, and then decide, do we need more money? Not enough money is getting to the classroom. Education is very important. I have 3 college degrees. I mean, I know how important education is, not just lower education, but higher education. And it needs to be properly done. There's no choice anymore.
Do you favor a reform of the revenue structure in this state? You're saying you don't need more money, you need to do this other thing first, but they've also talked about income taxes, talked about changing the tax structure as we make education a priority.
Well, I'm a Washington native, and when somebody says income tax, I cringe. I don't think that's ever going to happen in my lifetime in the state of Washington. People in Washington, you say the word income tax, and this is not going to happen. What we need is a shift. If there has to be more taxes, which I do not want to do, it's going to have to come out of sales or something like that to replace what's been levies. We shouldn't be relying on the levy system.
We should raise sales taxes, property taxes.
Well, as an example, if necessary. I don't think we have to. Many private schools spend a lot less money doing a better job. So we have to ask ourselves why. How come they can do it and we can't? Now there's some obligations they do not have. Public schools have to do the special education children. They have to take care of special needs children. Private schools don't have to if they don't want to, so that's one huge difference. But we need to look at different models and say, how come we're not getting enough money into the classroom? How come my 4 children were using history books that were outdated by 20 years? Should not be happening.
You're in favor of the charter school amendment?
I am not.
You are. I'm going to take that budget question and we'll go Corinne and then Jan.
I do favor some budget reform, some tax reform. I think we need to take a look at our entire tax structure. I too am not necessarily in favor of an income tax, nor do I believe that we'd be able to pass something like that here. But I do believe that there are tax loopholes, some incentives that we probably can and should get rid of that won't solve the entire problem. I understand that. But I think that there are some ways to get some more money into the general operating fund that are out there and not being utilized. I mentioned earlier the BNO taxes that can sometimes be crippling to small businesses. I think we need to look at those. The property tax is not structured the way that would provide a fair assessment to all, especially if you live in Pierce County like I do, and it's not necessarily fair in Pierce County these days. So I think looking at the whole picture of taxes and budget is something that needs to happen. Yes. Am I in favor of an income tax or raising taxes? No.
Could you briefly explain why Pierce County property tax aren't fair?
I think that they're not always levied in a timely fashion. If you've been paying attention to local politics, the current county auditor, assessor, is gotten himself into some trouble, and he's ordered his staff not to go out and survey new property, so those tax dollars aren't coming into the county offices, and some of the older property tax rates are at previous years and not current.
So this is more the matter of the wrong person doing the job rather than a statewide issue as far as.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was trying to make light of a situation that in Pierce County is not thought light of at all. So.
Jen, what are your thoughts on?
My thoughts on the budget, first of all, is we've got people that are having trouble paying their property taxes now, and even increase in sales tax. We live in a consumable tax state, and if people don't have the money to go out and buy those extras, that revenue doesn't come in. So the base of this is getting people working again and getting that disposable income back into our economy, because that runs county government, city government, and state government. Now, should we be looking at a different tax structure? I don't know how many years ago it's been now, but probably about 6 or 8. I sat on the Puget Sound Regional Council, and we had an economic development section at that time. And we started that conversation. If you're going to look at tax reform, you have to look at the whole picture. What are you going to change and how are you going to change it? You can't take some things off of the plate and then add others, or you can't add something on knowing what people are already paying. So you have to have a full discussion of the entire picture of the taxes. And that's going to be real tough to do. When we started that at the Puget Sound Regional Council, it's been, like I said, 6, 8 years, and I haven't seen anything coming out of there yet. So evidently they're having trouble with that conversation too. But one thing that I can say is, if you don't keep the employers able to provide those jobs, we can't afford to lose more jobs right now. Right now, Washington is the 10th most expensive state to do business in. And if you rank nationally, some recent benchmarks come out, Washington, with our workers' comp costs, ranks 50th in the nation. You know, we're putting all of these regulations and burdens and cost burdens on our employers, and yet we're asking or hoping they can provide new jobs. I worry about the people that have jobs now and if they're going to lose those. So we've got to get the economy back on base, and I don't believe now is the time to ask them to pay any more in anything. If anything, we ought to be looking at what burdens can we get off their back so that they can be profitable and retain the people they have and hopefully hire some more people. That will get us out of the economic hole that we're in right now. As far as education, yeah, we've got to find a way to do that. And like I said, we have a roadmap to do that. And actually, the 2009-2011 budget was about $12 billion annually. We actually have increased that to 13.647, I think, somewhere right about $13.5 billion. So we've increased that from the last 2 sessions. So that amount's going up. And I think what we really have to do is what the auditor has recommended, is take a look at how it's being spent, what's getting to the classroom, how can we do a better job. And he makes some recommendations. And one of those is to check and look at peer review with other schools in the nation, with other areas that are similar to ours, and see what are they doing, what could we do differently. And then, let's see, there was one other thought that, on tax loopholes. One of the things, the auditor also came out with an audit, and he is reviewing, and his agency right now is reviewing every tax incentive that is out there. My last check, there were 107 that have currently been reviewed, and they have found that they are doing what they were intended to do to create employment. So those are being left alone. Some of the tax incentives sunset, and they're going to go ahead and let those run out and then analyze again whether is it appropriate, will they create more jobs, should they be reinstated, and all of that will be analyzed a little at a time. But they're still working on that, and I think that so far those incentives, which a lot of times are called tax loopholes, had a reason, and so far the auditor's department is saying they are following the reason that they were intended to.
And I'm assuming you're supportive of that. Corinne mentioned that the evaluation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that you always have to be reevaluating whether something is still or should be in play.
It's my understanding that because eliminating or closing one of those tax exemptions would result in a tax being raised that conflicts with 1053.
It could.
Would any of you, and I want you all to answer this question, be willing to address that? To me, there's kind of a conflict in there that 2/3 of people, you need 2/3 of the legislature to institute this, but you can't repeal it. Or you can institute it with fewer than 2/3, but you can't repeal it without 2/3. Would you be interested in looking at a way to make that the elimination of tax exemption not considered a tax increase?
The 2/3 vote that you're asking about, first of all, it passed, I think, 63% in this area in our district, and the people have said to us that is appropriate. And they actually did that during 2007 when we had a surplus. And I believe the intent to us as legislators was, we got a surplus. We want to make sure that this money doesn't go out, or we don't end up with more taxes without public say-so. And I think that's why you're going to see it back on the ballot again. And I believe the people give me my marching orders, so we'll see what they have to say about that.
Maybe I was too confusing when I said that. Does 1053 make it too difficult to eliminate those tax exemptions that don't work?
It might make it difficult, but I believe that it was put in place for a reason. And again, the people felt that that was important. And I think it draws our attention to, all right, if it's going to take 2/3 of us to do this, is it something we really believe should be done? So, and I can remember when we had those discussions on the House floor, there were over 20 new tax bills in the wings ready to hit the floor. You've got to really look at the whole picture when you're doing that budget, and the answer isn't always hit the people for more money. Our people don't have it right now, and we've got to take that into consideration. businesses are on their knees.
Right.
And
We're
that,
we're
yeah,
not talking about that. We're
that's-
talking about the businesses that are judged not to need this anymore. That, I mean, you said it's
And
a very small percentage, but
I really
it's different
value
calls. Yeah.
the auditor's information that comes out. I'm going to miss seeing Brian Sontag. I think he's done a great job for us. I think the only mistake the legislatures have made is that they haven't taken what he has recommended, and I wish they would take it more
Let's let
seriously.
the other two address
He's done a good job.
Do you want to let Stephen go
Go
first?
ahead.
He hasn't had a chance yet.
Yes, okay. I think eliminating tax loopholes legally is a tax increase. So it does need higher percentage of vote. And the citizens of the state have stated clearly that that's what they want. So that's what we have, and I don't think that's going to change. I don't live in a theoretical world about this. I am a small business owner. When the economy started to go down, the employee I had was laid off. My BNO tax was increased by the state of Washington, and that helped push it over the edge. And we'd actually, from my perspective, instead of looking at eliminating tax loopholes, we should be looking at tax breaks. That kind of sounds contradictory, but for instance, on a service industry, professional service, if my B&O tax, which increased, went back down to where it used to be, I might be able to hire back my part-time secretary again, who's now unemployed. She then isn't paying her taxes that she was paying when she had a salary. And it's a domino effect. And other people in the service industry like myself have had to do the same things. They've lost their businesses, they've had to lay off employees, and the state of Washington rewarded us with a tax increase when we were barely getting by. And so, from my perspective, the lowering of taxes will actually increase taxes in some respects. And I've already expressed the idea that if someone is willing to start up a new business, a lot of new businesses fail when they first start up, that they should be given a break on the B&O tax for the first 6 months, help them get on their feet. Because if they make it, they'll be paying into the community for a long time and hiring people for a long time, and we win in the end. And if we don't give them that break at the beginning, they probably may not start up in the first place, and we wouldn't have that job or business anyway. And so I think we're looking at it backwards.
I agree.
And I would tend to agree. I mentioned the issue with the B&O taxes previously. I think that we do a disservice to our small businesses by dumping more and more taxes on them. And one way to improve the economy is to reduce that, modify it for a period of time, or make some changes to it. So yes, we need to make changes there. As to 1053, I don't know that eliminating those tax breaks or tax incentives constitutes a tax. And I think that's why there's a lawsuit already, because some other people feel the same way, that does it really constitute a tax increase if you eliminate some of those breaks? I think we leave that to the court to decide. Personally, I don't think it is a tax increase. I do think that that people in our area, people across the state and the country, are fed up with paying taxes. And tax is a bad, nasty word. And we need to make sure that the income that the state receives, in whatever form, if it's a B&O operating dollar thing, or if it's a tax thing, we need to be clear on the language that we use. And we need to make sure that we're using a language that is friendly to business, because we want to keep business here. We want to keep our economy in our area and keep our people working.
The last 2 weeks, we just had an elephant walk into the room called the upholding of the Affordable Care Act, which is shifting a huge Medicaid burden to the states. You've all talked about the need to reduce taxes, but with this increased burden financially, where's the money going to come from to afford it? If you're going to hit the stops in another year, you're going to have to make a decision. You've got to find education, you've got to increase jobs, You want to cut taxes? Where are you going to get the money?
If I knew the answer to that question, I'd probably be really rich. I could write a book and make lots of money.
But you've got a conflict. You've already created it.
Most definitely.
So what's your plan?
But,
Oh, theory.
well, if I was working at it all alone, it would be different. But there will be several hundred other legislators with whom I have to work. You have to take a look at what is being most efficient. We have to fund education first, but that doesn't mean we have to fund it with 90% of our dollars. It means we have to make sure it gets funded first. And as Ms. Angel said, we need to pay it first. I was the president of the local teachers association for 4 years, worked through some very difficult bargain decisions. And what always happens is the tough stuff gets left to last. And you do all the easy stuff first. And we have to stop doing that in this state. We have to have those hard conversations. We have to say, if we're going to fund education first, this is what it means. This is how much it's going to take. If we're going to fund social programs, this is what it's going to take. But we don't even know what this is yet. And that's what we need to determine. Again, if I had the answers to that,
Well, I'll follow up and I'll put that for the other two candidates. Are you willing to leave the status quo with the BNO tax and even entertain additional taxes or fees to meet the financial obligations of the state?
I'm willing to entertain them, yes. I believe that in order to have a discussion about our future, we have to look at all the options. We cannot say, we're not going to talk about this, or we're not going to talk about raising taxes. I don't want to raise taxes. I pay taxes myself. I don't want to do that to myself. I don't want to do it to my neighbors who I knew are really struggling. But I think that in order to have a discussion about the full effect of everything, we have to talk about the full effect of dollars as well.
I think, first of all, this is going to be crushing to jobs and to local business. I think of myself when, right now, if you have more than 50 employees, and I had 54 thereabouts, and I would have fit into this realm, if you have 51 employees, you either have to provide them health insurance, or you are assessed a penalty that's going to, looks like roughly be $2,000 to $3,000 per employee. That would have shut my doors. There is no way I could have done that. And this is going to have to play out, and I think even our national legislators don't know how this is going to come into effect. And we're probably going to have to take piece by piece as that continues to come down from the federal level. But I believe for the business person that has 51 employees or more, it's devastating. And we sure as heck can't have more jobs lost through this. We're shooting ourselves in the foot about that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes into effect. And I think that the proof is still going to be in the pudding. No one seems to know how this is going to work yet.
So you clearly don't like it, but you don't have a plan yet for dealing with it as a legislator?
Well, we have Washington State. We went ahead and put an exchange in place, even though we didn't have to do that until 2014. And that is in place. That gets it started. So we have done that. But we don't know what the responsibilities that are going to come down to the state are going to be as yet. And that will come down and go through the healthcare committee. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. And I'm totally, since I've been a business person, and I'm worried about how do our local businesses right down here on Main Street keep the doors open if they have to do that. Going to be a tough one.
What's your view then on affordable health care in general?
I personally believe that this can be totally controlled through a free market enterprise. And I have a plan that I can show how that can be done. There are other states right now that, well, first of all, Washington State can't move across boundaries. You can't go and work with Idaho or Montana or other areas like you do with car insurance. Can't do that. The other thing is a lot of different states have different types of programs that are working really well with health insurance. They're calling it concierge health, to where there are programs where you can go to a clinic that may be located in a business that takes cash, credit cards, health insurance, open 24 hours a day. And I've been watching some of those things that they've been doing. And the patients that are being surveyed have a 98% rate of saying this is working for them. So there are other ways. We have a 2% tax on our insurance premiums. If we're trying to hold down the cost of health insurance, why are we doing that? So I think there's a lot of things we could do to create a free market health program that would work, but we can't do a lot of those things right now in the state of Washington, and we've got to get to where we can do those, and I think we're going to have to work with our neighbors to do that. I think that competitiveness will hold the rates down, and it will bring those prices down, because you have a competitive market just like you have for your car insurance.
Third question, what do we do? Third candidate, what do we do when the money runs out and we don't have enough to fund all our priorities?
As it stands right now, we do not have enough money to fund these priorities. As I've indicated, as an attorney, I was actually surprised that the U.S. Supreme Court found it constitutional. I do like some parts of it. The idea of the waiting periods, the no dollar limits on how much gets paid out. Many of those things are very good for some individuals like me, for instance, who's a cancer survivor. I mean, I took that as a good thing. But the states, in my opinion, are responsible for the health care of the citizens, not the federal government. And what we've bought into is somewhere between the states being in charge of everything and universal health care. We're in the middle, and we don't have the money for it. Our state insurance commissioner has already indicated that he believes we're going to need more money, but he doesn't know how much. He doesn't know. We don't know. And it's a huge dilemma. I pay just shy of $900 a month for private insurance right now for 2 people. And it's outrageous. And the middle class is really going to get stuck with this bill. We have some lower income individuals. They're already getting assistance through Medicare, Medicaid, and retired people getting assistance as well. We then have people that are quite well-to-do that can afford their own insurance. I've been a huge proponent of buying across state lines, as Ms. Angel indicated. Why don't we have that competition? We do need that competition no matter what. That's the only way to get prices down. As a small business owner, there's only 3 places I can buy insurance from where I'm located on the Key Peninsula for my business. That's it. There's no competition. So the answer is we don't have enough money. That's the bottom line. The state of Texas has already told the United States government in nice words where to go. And other states, I think, are going to follow. We do not have the money. So I think we have 50 states looking at the federal government saying, are you going to send us some money? But that money is coming out of our pockets, just from a different direction. And no matter how you look at it, some of these taxes are going to go up. And nobody has answered the question how or whose. Is it going to be a federal tax? Is it going to be a state tax? And the honest answer is I don't know. But I think we bought something we cannot afford.
Stephen, you're and I'll frame this differently for the 2 of you, but you're running as a Democrat. You've said a number of things that we could say don't match with what I would expect the party line to be, I guess. I'm curious, first, why you are running as a Democrat. If you maybe just explain that a little
Sure.
bit. And then also, and this is where I'll ask you guys that a similar question on it. How do you differentiate yourself from the incumbent in the position right now? And I'll ask you kind of the same thing.
Okay. I consider myself a moderate. Is the best way to explain it. I grew up in Seattle, and I think by Seattle standards, I'm probably quasi-conservative. By Kitsap County or Pierce County standards, I'm probably a liberal. This depends on your perspective. The reason I'm running as a Democrat is there some things I do support that the Republican Party does not. Pro-choice, same-sex marriage. In my opinion, many individual rights that the Democratic Party strongly supports are values of mine. I see no conflict between the fact that I'm an expert marksman from the NRA, and at the same time I believe in pro-choice. that I support the Second Amendment, but at the same time, it's okay to have same-sex marriage. Those are not values that conflict in my mind. And so I'm running as a Democrat because even though monetarily, fiscally, I'm very conservative, I guess is the best way to put it, on social issues, I lean towards liberal. And I think that's what makes me very different in a number of ways. And I've been asked this question before. And there's one person in Olympia that kind of comes to mind who I happen to know, and that's Mr. Sheldon out of Mason County, who has crossed the line a few times, the way the parties look at it. And my response to him is, good for you. He has the guts to do that, and that's what we need. We can't have every vote is like, well, we already know what's going to happen. You know, it's going to be all Republicans on one side, all Democrats on the other. Maybe we catch a few going back and forth a little bit, and nothing moves forward. We need more moderates, and I think that's where I stand out.
And how do you separate yourself from the person in the seat right now?
I believe on social issues I'm more liberal, particularly on pro-choice and same-sex marriage.
Corinne, a similar question to you. I guess I want to know, this is maybe a little bit echoing what we started with, but how do you separate yourself from what Jan has done for the 26th district?
I mentioned earlier that I don't believe she's taken the lead enough on job creation, on budget reform, on the environment, on healthcare. And so I hope to be able to do some of these things. I'm a teacher, so education is very important to me. I would like to work really closely with that committee and make sure that not only funding happens, but this education reform thing happens in a manner that is smooth and works well for our students, because that's what's important. I too am much more liberal. I believe also I am pro-choice, and I am for same-sex marriage. I believe that all of our citizens need to be treated with dignity and respect, and that one person's marriage does nothing to harm another person's. So I am firmly in favor of that. It's interesting that Stephen mentioned the Second Amendment as well. I'm a military veteran, and if I can just tell a little story here, in knocking on doors at someone's house, when I said I was a Democrat and 22 years in the service, and he said, "How can that be? You're a Democrat." As if Democrats couldn't be in the military, couldn't serve. And I too am a very strong proponent of the Second Amendment, which maybe doesn't seem to fit in most people's minds, but it does easily fit in mine. I think that although Ms. Angel has served for several years and served the area, I believe it's time for a change, and I would like very much to bring that change to the 26th district.
Just a real quick question. Mm-hmm. If you were to be elected, how do you square that with your duty, your job?
It's going to be busy in the fall. I intend to go back to school and begin teaching, but I have already been given the okay from the superintendent's office that I would be granted a leave of absence for the session. So as long as the session ended after 105 days, I'm sure that they would grant an extension if need be, but we've already talked about that.
Okay. Actually, I should probably ask you the same question very briefly.
Well, I'm self-employed.
You are able to step away from your other work, or are you going to juggle?
I'm self-employed, and actually there's another couple of self-employed attorneys I work with all the time where we cover for each other.
Okay.
That's the reality of working in the courtroom, and those arrangements have already been made.
Okay. Jan, I'll let you either defend yourself against some of those things, or
I'd like to share.
Maybe
I'd like to share with you. I was chosen as a candidate to go to the Council of State Governments Legislative Academy. At that academy, they took us in. We went to the Air Force Academy, and we did testing, and we had to fill in all the little dots, and it was part of. We couldn't talk about whether we were Democrats or Republicans, but we took this test, and at the end, when it came out, it had the conservative side and it had the liberal side. And I came out so close in the middle, couple dots over on the right, couple dots over on the left, and I was very frustrated with that, thinking, what does this tell me? But when I started thinking about it, I thought, you know, for a politician, maybe that's where I should be, because hopefully when each issue comes up, you judge that issue on the merits.
What were some of the things on the left?
You know, I don't remember, but I thought, what does this tell me, you know? But I thought later, and I kept thinking about that, and I thought, well, maybe this is okay. But my family are Democrats. And when I was in college, I thought, I'm not sure that's what I am. And so I was an independent, and I became more conservative when I owned my own business. And I started seeing some of the things, and I thought, no, I'm more conservative. But I also am a moderate. There's some areas that I'm more conservative of, and more areas I'm more liberal on. I've had the chair of my caucus come to me and say, did you mean to vote like that? And I said, yes. And he goes, oh, okay. I've been supported by local unions. You know, I want to get people working, and I want to keep them working. And my goal is to make sure that we have good solutions for our folks. And it's gotten easier. Now that this is my 4th year in the House, I can go and knock on people's doors on the other side of the aisle and say, do you have a minute? And it'll be, yeah, Jan, come on in. Because I've built the relationships with them that you can have good conversations. And if you can have those good conversations, I really believe you can come to good solutions. And one other part of that, when I had an education amendment coming to the floor. I wanted to file it. My side of the aisle said, it's not going to go anywhere. I asked to file it anyway, and I did that. When toward the end of session they come and they said, Jan, your amendment looks like it's going to stand. I knew I didn't have enough votes to get it through. So I went across the aisle to another education policy person that we came in as freshmen together, and I felt that I knew her pretty well. And I said, this amendment looks like it's going to stick. It's going to help us get some money for education. What if I drop the amendment and would you carry it and you propose it? That way we can get enough votes to get this through. So we did that. When I stood up and the speaker said, Representative Angel, bring forth your amendment, I said, I withdraw my amendment, Mr. Speaker. And he's looking at me like, what are you doing? Well, she stood up on the other side and offered the amendment. I stood up immediately and supported her amendment. We got that through. Is my name on the final amendment? No, it is not. Doesn't matter. We got that through. And I believe that's what we've got to do. Our problems are far too serious right now than where is this center aisle and who sits on this side and who sits on that side. Our job is to take care of our people. And you do that through good conversations, good negotiations, and hopefully good solutions.
Just raise a point here,
Yeah.
and I direct it to the other two opponents here. And I'll ask each one of them the same question. What do you think qualifies you to go into that battleground in Olympia and be able to negotiate, compromise, haggle, all those things that are part of the political process? What experience do you bring that will allow you to effectively represent your district and yet be able to talk to and compromise with people with opposing viewpoints?
I have spent the past 15 years as a teacher, an 8th grade teacher, and if nothing prepares you for difficult decisions, seriously. I've also, as I said earlier, spent 4 years as the president of the teachers union in the Peninsula School District. We had, when I took office, close to 600 members. The school district saw $15 million cut from its budget during those 4 years. We had, my first year, we had a reduction in force where more than 100 people were laid off. We also had contract negotiations that came due during my term. Prior to my taking office, we had come to the 11th hour and were ready to strike. My term in office, we were able to negotiate a contract, as I said, through those budget reductions and those layoff of people. We came to an agreement on the contract before school let out for the summer. I have worked closely with the school district to negotiate some difficult things for individual teachers. So I know how to work with people of opposing views. I've also been working closely with the WEA, with OSPI, on the language for teacher evaluation that became part of the state, the new education reform. The Peninsula School District was the model, one of the models used for teacher evaluation, and I take great pride in being part of the team that helped to develop that years before the state required it. So we worked through that, which required buy-in from the district and from 600 people. So I have that experience. I worked for the city of Gig Harbor for close to 10 years, so I have some direct government experience. I worked for the local bank for a couple of years, so I understand some of the money issues that go on with loans and things like that. And I too my husband and I had a small business in Gig Harbor. So I understand life from a small business perspective. I'm a single parent, raised 2 teenage girls on my own. Again, if 8th grade wasn't enough to tell you how I know how to work with difficult people, a couple of teenage girls did it as well. I do believe that I have a range of experience, not to mention my 22 years of military experience, in dealing with people of all walks of life, with various viewpoints, some hard-headed people, and still being able to work to come to agreement on whatever our issues have been at the time.
From my perspective, I spent the last 25 years as a litigator in a courtroom almost every day, as a mediator, an arbitrator. I have actually written legislation that's been passed back in 1996, the DNA statute for the state of Washington, with bipartisan support, and I was even somebody that worked in Olympia at the time. I was the deputy prosecutor for Kitsap County. I've negotiated the Prosecutors Guild contract with the county commissioners while I was in the prosecutor's office. I've seen things from every perspective. From going to Olympia, I know that there's a lot of negotiating, a lot of mediation going on. The way I look at it, the job I have now, I've been assaulted, I've been threatened, and yelled at on a regular basis for 25 years. I'm not too worried about the environment down in Olympia. It's either going to be the same or a little bit better. Bottom line is that the experience of owning a small business now, I own a small business as an insurance investigator when I was going through law school. I worked in the Retail Clerks Union for 10 years while I was an undergrad working through school. And so I had the perspective of a union worker and a business owner and someone that's used to dealing with hot, angry people on a regular daily basis and also getting it done anyway. And so I think it won't be an issue.
Questions down here? We're kind of getting close to the end, so why don't we just give you guys a chance to kind of wrap up. If there's anything that we haven't asked about, this is your chance to do it. I believe we started with 1, 2, 3. Is that how we started?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Let's do that again. Let's close the same way. Before we do that, just say thanks. We appreciate you filling out the online form, and if you haven't done that, please do so. We're going to be promoting that to voters so they get a chance, and we'll have this up online very soon. So maybe about 2 minutes each, and I'll kind of keep a clock on it. Go ahead.
I want to come back to qualifications because I think that's the key here. What kind of qualifications and what experience, because during these difficult times, that experience really matters. I've gone through, let's start and just run through my life experiences. I've been in retail sales. I've passed insurance. I've been an insurance agent for my bank. I spent 14 years in banking between Colorado, Alaska. And during that time, I worked on loans and credit and lending and budgets. And then after that, I've worked as a financial officer, a chief financial officer for a large cable construction company. In that capacity, I worked as the liaison between management and IBEW labor unions. And in the past, I have been supported by IBEW because of that, and I think because I'm trying to keep people working. And in moving to Washington, I've had my own business with 4 locations, 2 in Kitsap, 2 in Pierce County, about 54 employees. I know how difficult it is to actually keep the doors open, sign the front of the paycheck, make payroll. Also, one other thing in Alaska, before I left there, I was a part owner of insurance property casualty business. So I've owned my own businesses, but in Washington State, it's very difficult to do business here and to keep those doors open. After that, my husband passed away and I went into real estate, and I've spent about 7 years in Kitsap County real estate, where I really learned a lot about property rights and land use issues, and I'm so thankful that I have that, because I've served now 4 years as the ranking member on local government, and that's been a huge help to me. But I served then 8 years as your Kitsap County Commissioner, with all that entails, plus sitting on 20 other boards. We had health, emergency, 911, all of those things, and now 4 years as your state representative, and all the experience that I've gathered there. I feel that that experience is crucial, and I believe that experience level is what separates me from my opponents. So I ask for your endorsement, and thank you.
Thank you. I would like to end with indicating that I think what I bring to the table is what's missing in Olympia as a whole, which I find quite sad. I've been a resident of the state of Washington for 53 years, my whole life. And we seem to have lost leadership. We seem to have lost statesmanship. We seem to be lost. Everything is right and left. The moderate, the middle ground, the common citizen has been left out. My supporters are not large unions. They're not large companies. My supporters are the social worker who emailed me from his trip in California to say that he wanted to support me, even though he'd always voted Republican before, because he believed in my ideas. My supporters are the retired neighbor of mine, who's a World War II vet, who says that he wishes me the best of luck. These are my supporters. The small business owners that are struggling, they don't have time in their schedules to complain. They're just trying to get by. The retired individuals who are looking at their shrinking incomes and wondering how they're going to make it into the next year, what's going to happen to their medical. They're on a frozen retirement and they're afraid it's going to shrink more, and they don't know what they're going to do. Those are my supporters, and what they're telling me is that we've lost what I refer to as statesmanship and leadership. It's missing. All we do is fight. And there's a difference between believing in your ideals and then coming to a compromise, and refusing to come to compromise and claiming it's your ideals.
I've been involved in the city of Gig Harbor life for many years. And I look into the faces of our future when I look into the faces of my students every day. And I worry what their future is going to be like. I worry what the future is going to be like for my grandchildren. And I hope to bring a fresh perspective, a wealth of experience that is somewhat broader, somewhat different than what is currently there. I too hope to work with both sides of the aisle and stop some of the bickering, some of the finger pointing that's going on. But I hope to bring a change. I would like to see wages that meet the needs of all of our families. I would like to see open spaces and fresh air for my grandchildren to play in the future. I hope for education that keeps us competitive in the global economy of the future, and I see a society that treats everyone with respect, and I would like very much to be a part of that. Thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. I thank you for your time, and I would ask for your endorsement. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.